Jazzcast Pros.
Hello and welcome back to High Vibe Table Talks. I'm your host, Marshawn Hargrave. Today we are going to be talking about something that, again, is special and connected to me and my hometown. If you've ever been to Rochester, New York, there are a few things that you hear about that you have to try, you have to see, you have to understand about Rochester. You know, the first that always comes to mind is a garbage plate. If you've never had one, you definitely need to try one. Kodak, which was in the first part of my series. You know, the Susan B. Anthony House, Strong Museum of Play, which is another must-see. And also the business that is going to be the topic of today's conversation, which is Wegmans. This is the Power Move series. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit of the history, why people love Wegmans, where it came from, what they do right, and then what you as a business owner can learn from the things that they are doing well. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Rashawn, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. After spending a decade working in sales for a startup and talking with hundreds of other women entrepreneurs, I know it can be lonely, but you can do this. So pull up a seat. This is High Vibe Table Talks. So a little bit of history about Rochester. Wegmans actually started in 1916 in Rochester, New York, and it was just a vegetable pushcart run by two brothers, Walter and John Wegman. Bob Wegman was one of the first ones to actually open a grocery storefront, and his kids are now the ones running it. So it is a third-generation family business started in Rochester, New York, and actually I used to watch this show, The Profit by Marcus Lemonis, and he did have quite a few family-owned businesses on there. And the third generation was typically when businesses would really struggle and a lot of downfalls did begin. Wegmans is not that. Wegmans is not struggling. I actually grew up near one of the first ones. It was a reference point when I was talking about my house, like, oh, I live right down the street from the Charlie Paul Wegmans. My friend Sarah and I would spend Friday nights there just perusing because it was something to do. And anytime there was a new Harry Potter release, that's where I would go and get it. If you have ever had a Wegman sub, you know. If you know, you know. And there are a few things that are staples when I think about Wegmans from growing up that have changed. You know, they always had these containers that had little cookies for kids to eat. It was right next to the deli. And so as parents that was kind of like one of the first stops you'd come in. And as parents were grocery shopping, they had something for their kids to munch on. They still always do have a lot of foods for you to try, which is always really nice and great, just trying something new. And people are obsessed. Like, people are very loyal to Wegmans. They get very excited when a new Wegmans is opening in their area. So what is Wegmans doing well? I mean, I just talked about a couple of the things that people love about Wegmans as far as their subs, their food samples. But behind that, they don't open stores very quickly. You know, they have a tried and true business plan that works. A lot of the Wegmans look the same, but they don't just say, oh, I think that, you know, Ashland, Virginia would be a good place to open a Wegmans store. And so let's just do it. Like, they take a lot of time researching the different places that they are going to open. And so there are years where they only open one or two stores, and they have teams that are dedicated to opening new stores, and sometimes they're just doing one a year. They do extensive community outreach. They do a lot of site visits, and they actually bring all of their employees to other Wegmans stores to train up to a year in advance. During the Target episode, we talked about how employee training and opening too quickly was part of their downfall. It's part of something that ultimately led to them failing in Canada. You know, their employees were not trained well. They didn't understand the markets. They didn't really research where they were going into, and they just opened a ton of locations very quickly. I think it was like 112 locations in a matter of a little over a year. And Wegmans does the opposite of that. Could it be to that the detriment. Could they have more stores? Absolutely. But this is something that is really important to them. I have a connection, like a friend of a friend who works high up in corporate. She has flown over to France with Danny Wegman in his private jet to go try cheeses. And I was talking with her at a party, and they were opening their first location in Manhattan. And it was really fascinating to hear her talk about some of that thought process, because this was the first store that they were opening where most of the patrons who were going to visit that location didn't drive. Like, people in Manhattan don't drive. And they really had to take that into consideration of, like, not only how they built the stores, where it was, but a lot of the things that, like, I go to Wegmans for, they have family packs. So, like, family packs of toilet paper and paper towel and, you know, the big things of water and all those sorts of things that you kind of buy a little bit more in bulk. And they didn't do that, because you're not going to go and buy a huge family pack of toilet paper and then walk down Broadway and carry it up 4 flights of stairs. And so that played heavily into a lot of the decisions that they were making. They don't just copy and paste and say, here is our flagship location. Now, every single location is going to replicate exactly this. And it's a balance of what they do. You know, when you go to a Wegmans, you know it's a Wegmans, and their branding is very well done. And every Wegmans has that specific feel. But the details, you know, you think about, you know, I just started coaching high school volleyball again. And my husband and I were talking last night. It's about all those little things that you do that make the team successful, that make it enjoyable. And I really think that's another thing that Wegmans does really well, is they think about the customer experience and how that plays into what decisions they make as a company. They don't open stores too fast. They research each market very deeply, and they are obsessed with the customer experience. One of the things growing up that people would talk about is the jingle for Tops Market, which was one of the other grocery stores in my town growing up, was Tops never mops, look at the floor, instead of Tops never stops, saving you more. And it just kind of had like that a dingier feel to it, whereas Wegmans was very clean and spacious, and you felt like the employees there cared about that location. And people also have like their Wegmans. You know, in the town that I live in, there's actually 2 Wegmans within a mile of each other, and people have their Wegmans. Like, you are either a Calkins Road Wegmans person or you're a Highland Drive Wegmans person. And again, like, they look very similar, the branding's very similar, but like, they just have a little bit different of a feel based on the people who shop there. Again, they're a mile from each other. And like, when you go into your Wegmans, you know where everything is, you know they're going to have what you need, you know it's going to be of high quality. And so the customer experience around the peace of mind of that, I think, is something that is very important. Another aspect of the customer experience is high quality prepared foods. You know, you have the subs that I talked about already that are so delicious. When my sister gave birth, my mom went and all she wanted was a Danny's favorite sub. And so she went there, and actually the sub place wasn't open yet. And they opened, and my mom got her the sub and brought it. Like, that's just the draw that people have to it. But on top of that, they have these like gold container meals. And so it's something that you could take the top off, put in your oven. They're quick, they're easy, they're healthy. You know, there's been so many nights where like I just, you know, am running from sport to sport or meeting to meeting and just can't think about cooking. And they have things there that aren't like, hey, I'm running to McDonald's or Burger King. They have really thought through the dietary needs that people have. And so for me, I'm looking for vegetarian options, which they always have. They talk about the protein that is in the meal. Their soups are always so delicious. One of the other things that did shut down during COVID, they had this, my Wegmans, they had an Asian food bar. And that was always one of my favorites to go to. And they had their mac and cheese that was in the food bar was always really good. My daughter always really enjoyed that. And so actually they have this really nice cozy seating where you can go. I've had meetings in Wegmans, like, hey, let's meet at Wegmans. They have good coffee. They have good, relatively inexpensive food. There was times where I would have to be in between two things. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it felt like almost on a weekly basis. I would pick Rowan up from something. We would stop there, and they have a kids section with a TV. And so it was mac and cheese and Bluey, and I would get one of their Asian inspired meals. And it was always so, so great. At some of their locations, they have live cooking demos. I already also mentioned a lot of the tastings that they have. So there are certain days where you walk around and it's like, oh, you want to try this, you want to try that. Again, it goes back to the customer experience. So if you try this, and it's not just hey, try these blueberries. It's try this quick, easy meal that you can put together. And so it's this grilled salmon with this certain topper and this rice. So then you eat that. They give you the recipe card of exactly how to make it. All of the ingredients are right there for you to just put in your cart and take home. And so the customer service is bar none. You go there and you say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. They train their people to say, don't just tell them it's in aisle 5A. You bring them to where it is and make sure that they find it. So from the top down, customer experience and customer service is very important to them. Their flower shops are also really beautiful. They'll help you arrange stuff. They always have incredible fresh flowers. And so as I was doing research for this, they actually conducted a survey. This is a couple years old, but among 12,700 shoppers found that Wegmans is America's favorite grocery retailers, scoring 77% on its customer loyalty index. And that actually tied with Publix. I do know that there is kind of a line in which Wegmans will not encroach into the Publix area. I can't remember now if that is kind of a handshake deal that they did or it's, contractually. I don't know what it is, but it does feel like Wegmans is all along the East Coast kind of until you get to West Virginia, and then that and south is Publix territory. So unfortunately for you, Floridians, Georgians, Alabamans, you love your Publix, but you have not had the pleasure of experiencing Wegmans yet. Kind of going back to the customer experience, you really can get pretty much everything you need at Wegmans. It seems so ridiculous, but as a busy sports mom, we talk a lot about, going to Aldi and going to Walmart and going to Trader Joe's and going to Wegmans and where do you get this and where do you find the most inexpensive that? But when it comes to if you have your grocery list, Wegmans is one-stop shop. Of course, there's things that you go to a Walmart or a Target and you can get tires or you can get a bike or you can get technology if you need a computer or headphones or, I love my beloved weekly finds aisle at Aldi. But if you have your grocery shopping list for the week, you're going to get everything that you need. I personally do make 2 stops. I think that the produce at Aldi is less expensive. There's enough that I can get at Aldi that is less expensive. So I make that stop. But inevitably, I always have to go to Wegmans because I like Wegmans Parmesan better. I like just certain things at Wegmans they do better. And also there's just certain things that you can't get at Aldi, like boars and cheese, things like that, And luckily for me, they're in the same plaza, so it's not too out of my way. Part of, I think, why customers feel so cared for when they're in Wegmans is because Wegmans corporate cares for its employees. Employee retention, employee care has always been something that was really important to Wegmans. I had many friends who worked at Wegmans through high school and college, and they have an incredible scholarship program. And so got a lot of their schooling paid for through Wegmans by working for them. They are consistently ranked in the Fortune 100's best companies to work for. They do a lot of training, as I, mentioned before. Like if you are going to join the team as like they're opening a new store, they do customer training up to a year in advance because they have so many stores and they have, a corporate piece of it. There's a lot of room for you to move up. And so they do invest from within. So like if you want to move up, like you start out at the store, customer service, customer facing, and then you can move up, and they really care about doing that. And so their culture is very important to them. And it's really evident when you go to the store and have any sort of like customer service interaction with them. You know anybody who works for them. As I was mentioning, my acquaintance who works for them has worked for them for decades. My aunt worked them for decades. My uncle worked for them for decades. Like they have a lot of young kids that are working there in checkout. They're always well trained, and their employees are like taken care of. Like if there's a customer service issue, the managers that are there are always there to take care of it, support their employees, because you have these 16-year-old kids that are like, I don't know how to handle this. And the manager swoop in and take care of it. You could just tell that from the top down, Wegmans cares about taking care of their employees, which again translates to their employees taking care of the customers. I can't remember which episode I was talking about this in, but I was listening to a podcast with Simon Sinek, and he talked about like quick expansive growth means there are going to be things that I don't know if falls through the cracks is the right term for it, but it's like there are certain standards that you have, and if you grow at a certain rate, you're not going to be able to hit those standards. And so like for him and his brand and his philosophy, he was okay with that because the overarching idea of what he was trying to implement into these organizations could handle some lack of perfection around it. And that was okay for him and his brand. Wegmans has said that is not okay for us and our brand. So they have had chances to expand faster, bigger, across many different places. And the leadership at Wegmans has said, no, we want to maintain our standards. And so, as I mentioned before, they do a lot of research. They go into these places and really understand the types of people they're going to serve, the area in which they are serving. And like that is very intentional by them. And it's important. And you can see it in the new places that they go. It is kind of a rebellion in this culture that glamorizes growth and big and faster and hustle. And they have said that can be for you, but it's not for us. It's kind of a rebellion of being like the relaxed entrepreneur, the cozy CEO, the one who doesn't do it faster just because that's what you're supposed to do, you should do. And Wegmans has had that philosophy for decades. So now we're going to get into what can we learn from Wegmans as solopreneurs. So the first one that I thought of, which was kind of cool, is like as a solopreneur, you are the employee. You are the employee. You're the CEO, of course, and you're the employee. And Wegmans does a really good job of taking care of its employees. So how can you take care of yourself? How are you making sure that you're checking in with yourself as an employee? The second one is that Wegmans is not the cheapest, and they're okay with that. You can be the cheapest, you can grow the fastest, you can have the best customer experience, you can have the best technology, you can be the highest quality. You can be a Honda or Chevy or Maserati. And none of those are better than the other. They're just different buckets. And so taking some time to say, which of those buckets do I want to fall into? Like I have this sales course. It's not the cheapest, but I think the customer experience and the way that it helps women entrepreneurs with ADHD and checks all the boxes for them, that's what's important to me. It's not $10, but I wouldn't be able to provide the service that I expect to for $10. But if you want to have the cheapest option, that is okay. Like, there are people in the market for that. There is give and take with each of those options. And so taking some time to understand where you are and where your brand falls into is important, because you can't be everything to everybody, or else you're nothing to no one. The next one is that you can rebel against the hustle culture. As I said, Wegmans definitely could have grown faster, kind of fallen into that trap of what Target did of like, let's open 112 stores in 14 months and then fail miserably. But for decades, they have said, no, these are our priorities. This is what is most important to us. And we're going to make decisions with that in mind, and that being the filter in which we make all decisions. And the last is like, what delight, what joy can you bring to the customer experience that they're already having, even if that customer experience is through your free email list? Can you bring something that brings joy and delight to the people that are receiving those on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, whatever that is? Yes, so hopefully I have given you some insight into Wegmans, maybe some draw if you've never visited one to go to one, and some thoughts around the Wegmans philosophy in this Power Move series that you can bring to your business as a solopreneur. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so appreciative if you left a review or a star. Really? Left a review or sent me a message, just some way to interact with this podcast. It means more than you know. And until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.